All right, Castleigh, let's talk about it more then. Let's go even more in depth in terms of strategies, right? So, credit is a game in a way. It's supposed to reflect, how likely you are to pay someone back, trust levels, those types of things. But what are the main factors that actually affect someone's credit score? And like, if you put a gun to somebody's head, what would you recommend that they do to increase their credit score, most rapidly?
Well, we're gonna stay off the gun, but hey, if we want to get that, we want
Yeah.
to trigger you. So if you use another gun term, we're gonna trigger you to action.
Trigger
Um,
to action.
yeah, trigger to
Yeah.
action, right? So,
Yeah.
so I mean, there are five main categories in the FICO scoring model, and FICO is the base model behind where most of your credit score calculations that the banks and financial institutions use. So the five main categories are payment history, credit utilization, average age of credit, credit inquiries, um, and which ones? I forgot the fifth one. It's like small. But the two main categories actually that you need to pay attention to is payment history and credit utilization. So those two account for 65% of your score. So payment history accounts for 35% and credit utilization accounts for 30%. And those are the two main ones that you can handle most proactively. Like average age of credit, you can't really do anything about it. So it's kind of a length of time kind of account, as well as how many recent inquiries you've had. So you can do stuff by not doing stuff in that category, or credit inquiries. Hey, don't open any new credit cards or request any new access to capital for the next 24 months, because it's a 24-month time frame that's those inquiries sit on your credit report. So if you kind of know to keep it under 2 to 3 credit inquiries in a 24-month time frame, just check on your credit report and see how many you have on there, and make sure you don't really go above that number too often. Because then that we start to get to 5, 6, 7, 8 inquiries. It makes you look desperate from a score perspective and from a bank perspective. So then they start to it's going to impact your score, but then they start to question, why are you reaching out for so many different parts of credit in a short period of time? But the two main ones, again, are payment history and credit utilization. So payment history, always pay your bills on time. That's the simplest, right? And yes, sometimes we can forget. The easiest way I do it is for any fixed expenses, I automate them. So anything that's a fixed expense, my mortgage is monthly, my rent is monthly, my student loans are monthly, my car payments monthly. It ain't going to change. It's an installment account. Pay that. Just have the automatic payments set up out of your checking account, and monitor them every month. Make sure that they're gone, they're paid, and you can set up reminders. I set up reminders to know that, hey, these bills are due, but I make sure my automatic payments are set up at least a week or a couple of days before the due dates. So just in case something messes up with my bank, I still have some time, right? You don't want to kind of set your payment date on the 30th. Your bills are due on the 30th or 31st. Then you don't really have, so if your bank ever messes up, you need to leave yourself some room. So I typically try to put about 5 to a week out, and then have a couple of reminders to make sure that they're gone. And then for other pieces, for credit, and the other piece is credit utilization. So with the credit utilization, that's on revolving accounts. So revolving accounts are your credit cards, any type of revolving lines of credit that you may have out there, and you want to keep those under 25%. Now, people will say 30. I'm going to go 25, right? Because yes, 30 is kind of one of the barometers for cutoff, but 25 gives you a little room, right? So if you do get to that 27, 28, you're not hitting the 30 plus. 30 is kind of where you'll see the better scores. And really, people in the 800 typically have 10 or less. But if you want to get to that 700 plus to get in a good space, you're going to see typically around 30, underneath 30%. So I'm going to say aim for 25 if you can. And you definitely need to check to make sure what is there on your credit report for opened lines of credit and what your opening balances are. So when it comes to you can calculate your own credit utilization. So they will give it to you, but the basic calculation for credit utilization is what's the total amount of revolving capital you have access to. So again, typically your credit cards, any type of revolving lines, anything that you can move up and down in a particular month with your choosing is typically revolving, right? You can make that payment. There's no prepayment penalty. But then when you pay that down, you get that access back. That is open available credit, right? Then you want to, so that's the bottom number. What's the maximum total numbers of credit cards and those things in states? You have 3 credit cards, 10,000 each. Total is 30,000 available credit. Now on those 3 cards, I have 2 balances that I'm carrying, 1.5, 1.5, right? So I have 10,000 of, current balances being used. So again, put that 10 over the 30. What's my utilization? 33. All right. So that's where you got to make sure you understand where those numbers are. And then how do you manage that? Now, the 2 ways to attack utilization. So for payment history, always pay your bills on time. I'll come back to what you can do if you've missed a payment. But let me kind of still focus on credit utilization. Credit utilization, the 2 ways to kind of play with that is to actually take some of your extra cash flow and pay that down. So you'll reduce the number of open balance. If I have an extra $1,000 this month and I throw it to my 10,000 that I owe, I'm bringing it down to 9, right? That now my utilization number comes down. So again, I kind of play with that a bit. So use that extra cash flow if you have it. That's one way of addressing it. And that's the way that I would promote the most, because it teaches the discipline of cutting your expenses down and then using extra cash to attack something like your credit utilization or your open balances, right? Then the other way of actually pulling your credit utilization down is to literally open another line of credit, open another credit card. So now if I have these, this $10,000 amount that is open, I have 30,000 of total credit available right now, and I take out another $10,000. Now what does that go to? So now I have 40,000 of available credit. Once I get that, and that goes up over 10, that's still open, 25%, right? So the thing about that is 2 things hit. What people typically don't also do the calculation. Now I have a new credit inquiry that what I just said before hits my credit report. So depending on how many open credit inquiries I had before, this one inquiry could push me over into one of the higher risk categories for credit inquiries. So again, always know kind of how many credit inquiries you have sitting on your credit report are hard inquiries as well. Because me looking at my own credit report is a soft inquiry. That doesn't do anything to hurt me. Hard inquiries are for lines of credit access that you've accepted or you've directed a institution to run on your credit report. And those are the ones that count. Hard inquiries versus soft inquiries. Soft inquiries, hey, I'm using the Trifigo app to look at my credit score. That's a soft inquiry. Will not show up on your credit report. Don't even worry about it. But on the hard inquiries, again, pay attention to those. Now, the other thing that it also hits is average age of credit. So now I have a new credit line. If I had, say, 10 years of average credit, because I had a card from 20 years ago, and then my last card I took out was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And so I have a 10-year average age of credit. Now that 10-year average age of credit is going to come down to maybe 9 years and 2 months or 3 months, depending on, again, the length of history that I have and when was the most recent cards or when were those other cards that I have, were they opened? So that's kind of the game that you're going to get a hit on average age of credit. Now, if I have 15-year average age of credit and it comes down to 13, it's actually not going to be that bad. But for the typical younger consumers or people that have opened more accounts recently, that's going to pull your average age of credit down. So if you kind of drop from 10 to 8 or 7.5, that's going to be a pretty decent hit on your credit score. So account mix and account total, that's the other one I forgot to mention before. Account mix and account totals, again, can't really do a whole lot about them. Those are like
account total. How many accounts that you have? Is that what it is?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
How many open accounts on your file?
Okay, gotcha.
On your credit file. So between TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, how many accounts do they have on your files on there? So there's kind of a sweet spot number. They're looking for anywhere between 15 plus accounts. So that's kind of also another interesting one where you want to have a decent number of accounts and account mixes. So there's some parts of where depending on the particular model, they use a calculation for an account mix. They want to see installment and revolving accounts. So they want to see some student loans. They want to see some credit cards. They want to see some auto loans. They want to see a mortgage eventually on there. Not all the time, like immediately. But if you have nothing but credit cards, you have 7 credit cards, your account mix total, depending on the model, becomes a little off because now you're heavy revolving base and not revolving and installment. So it's an interesting one depending on the particular model, but some models lean towards more of account mix in terms of installment versus revolving, and some lean to just straight account total number. So we want to see 15 plus accounts reported over the period of the last 5 or 6 years.